2, 3, and we are live. Welcome back, everybody, to Locked Up Logic podcast with the founder of the International Protection Alliance, Jacob Ostler. What's up, man?
Cheers. Good to be here.
Yeah. Let's do a cheers. I got a protein shake. You've got water because you've got some allergies. Cheers to whoever's listening to give lots of money to the International Protection Alliance.
Well,
Yeah.
it's always welcome.
Yeah. So, I guess to start us out, Jake. We are a podcast about stories, good stories, and sometimes bad stories. And with your story, it's a mix of both, where they're good stories, but they are at the same time bad stories. It's like the OG of like good fighting evil, evil fighting good. And so to start us out, just give like a good note. Why don't you tell us about? Give us a show that you're streaming either right now or a show that you would recommend. Like, what is a human rights activist watching his free time? And then give us a moment where you walked out of a movie theater, you walked into it so hyped, and you walked out just so disappointed.
All right.
And you can swear if you want.
All right. And I will say, I'm babysitting my in-laws' dog, and I'm a little allergic to him. And so today, if I'm sniffly, that's why.
What kind of dog is
He's a yellow lab,
he?
who I love, but sheds a lot, and is also very cuddly. Yeah, Mike, you've hiked with him.
Yep, I know Mike.
Dang
it, Mike.
So apologies in advance if that makes me harder to listen to or if I have to sneeze. So I am currently streaming, this is not going to be a shock to you, The Blacklist again.
Oh, okay. Again.
I started in season 2 this time, and I'm in season 4, and I love The Blacklist. I've streamed the whole thing a couple times, and it's...
What do you like about it?
I think it's incredibly well written. I think the plot is fun. I love Spader, phenomenal actor. He's the best actor in The Office, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And I love just all of...
The Lizard King.
Yeah. I love the types of crime and the things the criminals are doing are fascinating, and they're crazy, and they're outlandish, and it makes it fun. Like, it's just not something you expect. It's not like, hey, this guy robbed a bank. It's like, oh, this guy is an assassin, but instead of killing one person, he hides it in a terrorist attack that kills 200 people so no one knows who his real target was. And it looks like a natural disaster. And it's stuff that's not super, like, it's not like alien invasions, it's not fantasy, it's still crime, and it's phenomenally written. The relationship dynamics, none of the characters are static, they're all dynamic characters, they're all going through changes emotionally, relationally, career-wise, etc. And it's awesome.
I love The Blacklist, but it kind of lost me. I think the last season and a half, I think.
Yeah.
When like Agent Keen became like a bad guy, and like her face like disappeared on screen, and like it was really hard to hide that she was no longer a part of the series, but they were still trying to include her in the series.
Yeah.
But like season 1 to like season like 6.5, that's like peak Black. That's like peak TV.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the last 2 seasons aren't my favorite either, but I'll still watch them.
Yeah.
Like, it's just more content for me.
Have you seen Blacklist Redemption? Have you seen that one, like the spinoff?
No.
It's only one. I think you can get it on Netflix or Peacock, I think. But it's 1 season long. It's a story of not Max Keen. Why is Max? Is it Max Keen? Is that his name?
Elizabeth Keen?
What's her husband's name?
Oh, Tom.
Tom Keen. What? Max Keen? Who's Max Keen?
I have no idea.
Oh my gosh! No, there's a character in TV called Max Keen. I forget. Tom Keen. It's his relationship with his mom. It's like a season-long thing of like his relationship with his mom. I don't remember exactly the storyline, but his mom and him have like a complex relationship or something, and something happens. But it was really good. It only lasted 1 season, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Okay. I'll check it out. Blacklist Redemption.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. What about the theater experience where you were walking in and you were just hyped, and then you got so disappointed?
I think we have the same one, and it's definitely Thor: Love and Thunder.
Yeah.
I prep for that religiously, and I mean that by I watched no trailers. If you remember, I wouldn't let you talk to me about it. I would mark everything on Instagram that showed up Marvel related as offensive, so it stayed off my.
He would
off of
leave
my
the room
screen.
when I would talk about this.
And I wanted to know nothing. And all I knew was Thor was in it, and Natalie Portman was in it, and I'd seen the photo of her holding the hammer, and I knew nothing else. Didn't know Christian Bale was a bad guy, knew nothing. And I went in, and it was terrible. And, yeah.
I think if I remember correctly, is it you were walking out of the theater and you were like, I think I liked it? But, like, clearly your expectations were not met.
I wanted to like it.
But and the more you talked about it, you were like, the more I talk about this, the less I like it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's 100% true. I wanted to like it. I wanted to support Thor, who's my favorite superhero. Like, I wanted all of that, but it didn't land for me.
What about it didn't land? The humor, the time, the acting?
The humor, the timing. I thought the direction they took his character didn't make sense with the overall story of where he'd come from to where he was now.
Infinity War Thor is peak Thor, I think.
Yeah.
Where like he's still the god of thunder, but he's been through a lot, so he's sad, but he also like finds snippets of humor like in his sadness.
Yeah.
And the scene where and you know what I'm talking about, where he shows up in Wakanda.
Yeah.
Like I can't think of a better scene in like all those Marvel movies.
Yeah. And I loved the idea of the Natalie Portman storyline. I loved like that they held true to the terminal diagnosis. I loved those things. I just think that it was way too much of a comedy for what I wanted. But yeah, that was kind of my overall experience. That is the most disappointed I've been walking out of a theater, other than the live action remake of Tarzan.
I didn't even know they had one of those.
Yeah.
Is that one pretty bad?
Yeah, it's terrible. It's not worth knowing about.
When did it come out?
Sometime while I was in college. So sometime during 2015 to 2018, I think.
Yeah, I feel you. Like, anything about that Thor movie, God, Christian Bale, Gore the God Butcher, like it just had so much potential. And then like you watch like kind of the downfall of that director since too. Like he's directing like one TV show now. Like he's just not doing much. Taika Waititi. And I'm just like, it's kind of deserved. Like, yeah, you made Thor Ragnarok, which is great, but
yeah,
the goats, the humor, the special effects, how do you do a Thor movie that's an hour, like 40 minutes long? You like when movies like that short into a Marvel movie, you just assume it's gonna be bad because they just want to get your money and get you out of the theater. So anyway, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
I like the you mentioned storyline in Thor: Love and Thunder. How you were interested in that storyline. I'm interested in the storyline where Jake Ostler is one of the co-founders of the International Protection Alliance that stands at the forefront of efforts to stop exploitation and protect communities from online predators. How do you end up doing this? Like, where does your journey start? What gets you into the mindset of like, okay, this is what I want to do full time.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do is to essentially fight evil, go into these places and work with law enforcement and support survivors of abuse. How do you, in your storyline, how do you end up as a co-founder of a nonprofit? Like, what path kind of led you to do that?
Yeah. So I'll say a couple things. This is not the norm for my family, my social circles. Like growing up, I come from accounting, finance, real estate, marketing. Like that's where my family and connections background was. So this is not by any means the norm for what I thought I'd end up doing. During my undergrad, I actually started out taking a lot of business classes. I took marketing classes. I took business lecture series classes, and just nothing was landing. So I took a semester and just took random classes that interested me. And those were things like wildlife conservation, and one of those was psychology, which is kind of what led me down where I'm at. So I was in my undergrad and, one second. I was in my undergrad and I was having fun. I was learning. And during my undergrad is when the Me Too movement happened. That's when, if you're not aware of Me Too, it's when people started posting about their own experiences with sexual violence, harassment, assault with the hashtag #MeToo. And it was a huge awareness campaign. It turned into discussions on consent. There were laws rewritten. There was all of this national and international focus on this issue. And you had a lot of really prominent people posting about it, a lot of people posting in their personal lives, and it wasn't something I'd been exposed to before. I hadn't talked much about sexual violence in my life. I hadn't ever experienced any. I hadn't studied its prevalence. None of that was on my radar. And so that happened, and I just started focusing and learning and kind of diving down this information, this wealth of information I just never had. Studies on prevalence of sexual abuse in college. I talked to people I know in my own life that started sharing experiences with me. Like it really changed a lot of how I look at the world. And I decided I wanted to focus my studies there. That's really what I decided. I didn't know what direction. And I started studying psychology. That's what I declared as my major. And then I started studying sexual violence. So I studied it in the pornography industry, on college campuses, in Utah, internationally, among populations experiencing homelessness, all of this kind of stuff. And that's when I met you. For those of you who don't know, Tyler's been one of my most key mentors in this space, and also is now an incredible friend. But when I was a student, he used to buy me lunch and teach me about this issue, and just let me pick his brain. And I've learned things about, like, in some countries, they need more to prosecute child sexual abuse crimes than others, and some of the times you were dealing with that and what that looked like with regards to the penal code and all of that kind of stuff. And like which countries had grooming laws and other things, and it was just a world of information I didn't know about. And for me, the reason I made a career out of it is your career takes time. It takes mental energy, it takes resources, it takes time away from friends, family, colleagues, hobbies, etc. And it requires education and learning. It's where you spend your mental energy, and I wanted a career that I felt was worth the cost of what I was giving. I didn't want a career where I was going and doing something I didn't consider meaningful or beneficiary. Like, I didn't want to be walking out of the door of my home every day and feeling like my job serves no purpose. I'd rather be at home. I love my home and I want to be there. I also know that I have to do something to have the home life that I want and have the life that I want. And so I kind of explored this space, and I found, for me, the population I serve and the groups that I serve through my job, through my career, are the most worth that sacrifice of anything I can think of. And so that's kind of how I got to where I am. And once I started studying sexual abuse, I learned not only that sexual abuse happens, but sexual abuse is a commodity that people pay for. Like, we talk about trafficking and sex trafficking. In reality, it's people paying for the opportunity to rape somebody else, which is terrible. The fact that that's marketed, sold, a business is unreal. And how prevalent that market is, how open it is, and I'll talk more about this, but most of what we do at IPA is online on the apps that you have on your phone. It's Instagram, it's Twitter, it's Facebook. That's where people go to buy rape videos of children. That's where they go to gain access to kids and to do those things to them. It's where they go to groom kids to get them to send them things. This is not a major dark web problem. It's happening on these apps. And that's a little bit of the why and how I got here.
Did you go with me to go see the movie She Said? Do you remember this?
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about this while you were talking, and I think the Me Too movement, if I'm not mistaken, sprung out of that investigation into Harvey Weinstein. And once all these actresses and celebrities came forward about these accusations against him, that's when I think the Me Too movement kind of spiraled and expanded and it gave a voice to so many different people. Like, oh, this happened to me as well. And we saw just how common it was, like with these individuals. And I was like, I think it was Jake that went and saw that movie with me. Really good film. We'll put the link to it. She said, and I want to go back to like you in the Me Too movement. Like if it was me in your situation, I imagine that the first people that I would ask about Me Too is anyone I had in my close circle, family, friends, people you were dating, like whoever. I guess 2 questions. Was that like your first response when Me Too came out and you were looking to learn, is like ask people that you already knew? And what did you, I guess 3 questions. Is that what you did? 2, what did you find? And what was your emotional reaction to the information that you found out in the Me Too movement and the people that you talked to?
So,
does that make sense?
Yeah. So I actually didn't really start with the people like I didn't start with my immediate family. I didn't start with sisters, mom, cousins, etc. I started with friends I had in college. And I prefaced it carefully and very intentionally, and I would tell them, hey, I've been studying, like this is what I'm focusing on, and I've been studying and learning more about sexual assault and like Me Too and stuff. Are you okay if I ask you some personal questions? And I'd always do this in a one-on-one setting. I never did it in a group. And
can you imagine?
Yeah.
Like in a group setting.
Yeah.
Hanging out at BYU, bro. It's like, who here has been Me Too?
Yeah. But the vast majority of people said, yeah, go ahead, ask. And I would just say, have you had an experience that you would call sexual violence or sexual assault? And a lot of people said yes. And then I would say, are you okay if I learn more about it? And then if they said yes, which most people did, I would just ask them, what do you want me to know? What would you tell me to help me understand this better? And I would just let them take the floor, talk about it, share. And my goal wasn't to fix anything. My goal wasn't to console. My goal was to understand. And so that's how I approached it. Like I wasn't offering a service. I wasn't offering help or assistance. I wasn't a therapist. I was just a kid in my undergrad who was deer in the headlights at this massive sexual assault issue that felt like it was just coming down the highway. And I was just like, whoa, that's what this is. And it was always like, I felt like they were always worthy of respect. I felt like the people sharing with me were always being vulnerable. I always took what they said at face value as honest. And I think my biggest feeling was just like sadness and just, okay, this is someone I know and this is something that they carry. And just understanding and seeing that more in my life. I understood that more. And that was my reaction. And then I'd ask strangers, I'd ask people I met if I was like at a social gathering and me and someone were talking one-on-one, and it's college, people always go, what are you studying? And I'd tell them. And then if it was private enough, I would ask them. And I just do that same line of questioning. I asked women, I asked men. Men more frequently shared that they hadn't had an experience. The majority of the girls I asked at BYU shared that their experience happened while they were at BYU. Very rarely did I have someone go in and tell me something that happened to them when they were a little kid. That happened to me a couple times. Mostly it was, I was making out with this guy and then he was touching me and I told him to stop and he didn't. And he then did X, Y, and Z. Or he pressured me into this and just kept asking, and then I felt scared, and then I said okay because I was terrified and we were alone in a car in the canyon. And things like that were very reflective of the stories I was being told and the experiences that were shared with me. And so that's kind of what solidified for me that this issue was something I wanted to focus on, wanted to learn about, wanted to understand. And then as I grew in my career, I kind of figured out where I wanted to make and where I felt like I could develop tools to make an impact, right? Because we talk about this, people want to help. It's hard to know where you can. And I was lucky enough to learn about this early enough in my career that I identified I want to help with mental health healing and recovery, and I want to do it in this space. So that's what I focused my education on. Like my master's is in social work, which allows me to be a therapist. I did an emphasis on global and cross-cultural practice, which allowed me to learn the skills I need to build up clinical and care teams in different countries and understanding that. The certificate from Vanguard University, that's anti-trafficking specific, allowed me to put that on my resume. It also allowed me to explore a trafficking specific education program, where instead of like most social work programs that have trafficking, it's 1 or 2 lectures, or at most it's a semester. But this was 8 courses that were all 8 weeks long that all talked about trafficking from a specific lens. And then the networking and growth. Like I've networked a lot with people in this industry, in this space, that have lived experience, that have career experience, that have been working in this space for a long time. And I have a network of therapists, residential programs, practitioners, nonprofits, law enforcement that's in multiple countries that I can call. Like I can call therapists in Ghana and ask them to staff cases with me if they've seen something similar with like a forced marriage case. I worked in Utah, and we'll talk about those things. And that's been something that's been an incredible resource to me. And I was fortunate enough to figure that out rather than 20 years from now doing something completely different and saying to myself, I want to come and do something in the anti-sexual assault space, or the this space or this space. And then you have to figure out, okay, the skill sets that I've spent the last decade building, how do I implement that in this space? And so that was something that I was able to do, is to identify where I wanted to fit, and then to build up my career in a way that I had the skills that met the need that I wanted to meet.
So you talk about like your therapist in Ghana. I'm picturing like in my head. I know this. This next question, because I know you for a long time. I know how much you've traveled to like gain insight on like you talk about like where you did your emphasis in of like cross-cultural support, getting insights from all over the world. Like I picture in my head like you've seen the movie Batman Begins, right? Where obviously your parents weren't killed, thank God, but Bruce Wayne leaves Gotham City to go understand the criminal mind by essentially going to Asia and backpacking through Asia, fighting criminals, getting locked up. You can fight criminals full time. And I'm picturing in my head, because I know you, and I know your story of you with a backpack, kind of doing something similar. Maybe not like fighting criminals, but like going to like Nepal or Thailand or Ghana or all these different places with the intent on learning more about the crime, learning more about the survivors. I guess, is that accurate? Is that what you did? Or was that just, like you fell into that kind of position on just your travels? Mm-hmm. And did you always want to focus internationally? Did you want to focus like where you live? Tell us a little bit about just your journey. And once you gain the education, once you gain the insight into Me Too, and you leave the comfort of your own home to go learn more, like what was that like?
Yeah, I would say that I've spent a large majority of my time understanding trafficking in the U.S. and in Asia, with also a couple experiences in Africa and Latin America, primarily with you, and some other places. But like Ghana was an internship. I didn't provide any services at the time. I went and spent the summer in Ghana working with first survivors of forced marriage, children who'd been forced to marry adult men, and then had been removed from those situations and were being cared for by the government in Ghana. I went and I learned about their residential programs, what services they offered, what services they wish they could offer that they didn't. And I learned like what's culturally normative and family systems and rupture and all of those kind of things. And then now with my education, I can work with those social workers that I met during my time there, and we can staff cases together, and we can help each other understand different issues. And it goes both ways. Asia is where a lot of my education focused, and it's where a lot of my connections are, so it's where IPA focuses. Like IPA's main office is in Thailand, and that's where most of our impact has been. As far as domestically, I have done a tremendous amount of work to understand the trafficking issue in Utah. Like, my first experience working with survivors of trafficking in the U.S. was working with Missio Dei and HealX and Asian Association of Utah, working with people experiencing homelessness and working with women who are being exploited living on the streets of Utah, helping them with their drop-in center, helping provide hygiene kits, helping with medical screenings, helping with all of these things, and really learning that some of our most vulnerable in Utah that get trafficked here are people experiencing homelessness and refugee and immigrant populations. And that's where I started. So I've done a lot here, and then working on what's called familial trafficking cases, which is where people are trafficked by relatives and sold for sex by their relatives, understanding that issue. And that's primarily the space I work in as a therapist now, is people who were trafficked either online or in person or both as a child here in Utah. Like, I see them now that they're adults as a therapist, or I work with parents whose kids were sexually exploited online. Like, that's kind of the niche that I fit here. And then I do consultation and other things for nonprofits, companies that are interested or curious about the anti-trafficking space.
So you're a BYU student. You're talking to people about their experience in basically experiencing sexual assault. You travel the world, gaining experiences here and there of what human trafficking looks like, how you can help, where's your niche, including like in your own backyard. All this leads to the moment where you start what we're talking about on the podcast, the International Protection Alliance. 2 questions. Why did you start it? Like, what was the purpose behind it? Like, why not just join up with somebody else doing something similar? And 2, first one is, why did you start it? The other one is like, what do you guys do? Like, what are you guys working on? What do you have this organization you were talking about on the podcast? Like, if someone is listening and looking to give, but they want to know, okay, if I give to the International Protection Alliance, like, what exactly are the inner workings on what that donation will do?
Yeah. So International Protection Alliance is primarily an online safety organization. So we have 2 main facets we do. We work with, our mission is child sexual exploitation that takes place online. And what that means is it's kids that are groomed online, people who are sexually abused, that abuse is filmed, and it is then sold and distributed online. We also have started working cases where AI was used to generate CSAM. CSAM, if you don't know, is called child sexual abuse material. It used to be called child pornography, but there was a movement to change the name from child pornography because people have an idea of what pornography is, and that's not what's happening in these videos and images. Like, these are kids being sexually abused. And so it's called CSAM. So you'll hear me use that phrase. And so we work these kind of cases. And one of our main facets is working with law enforcement. And we work with law enforcement in Thailand and a couple other countries and here in the US to identify bad actors, people online that are creating CSAM, distributing CSAM, selling CSAM, all of those types of things. And I mentioned this earlier, this is not like a dark web issue primarily. Like, we're working these cases on Facebook, on X, on Instagram, on niche apps that exist in specific countries. Like Line is a Thai messaging app. It's essentially WhatsApp but for Thailand, and people use that app. Like, people groom kids, they film kids, and they distribute that in Facebook groups. They do this on the applications we have on our phone. And so we work with law enforcement, right? We're a nonprofit. We have no arresting power. We have no authority to run into a home, grab a kid, and remove them. So like the very first case we worked in Thailand was a father who had been sexually abusing his son and then selling that online. We were able to identify the father and the son and pass that as essentially a well-informed tip to law enforcement, who are able to action it once they verify it. And so they go in and they give the warrant, they make the arrest, and then we help support that boy. And that boy, during his interview with government social workers, when they were interviewing him about what happened, he disclosed that that abuse had started from his father when he was about 4, and he was currently 11. and it's very likely that he would have been abused at least until he left the home. So we were able to potentially prevent up to 7 more years of abuse for this young boy. And then our law enforcement partners, one of the things we help them with is called digital forensics. And so this is where we go through with them devices like phones, computers, all of this kind of stuff to identify more kids being abused, identify more people that they were trading CSAM with, identify more people abusing kids. And like that arrest point is when an investigation really begins. It's not when an investigation is done. It's not like, hey, they were arrested, boom, they're done. Like, one, there's more evidence and more cases, and we can help law enforcement identify more people and more children from digital forensics. We then have the active legal case and the prosecution, because if the guy's not prosecuted and he's just back home in a week and he has access to his son again, that the sexual abuse is going to start back up. And then there's the aftercare side, which is where I focus, which is helping these kids heal, get the resources they need. And so for this boy, he was taken in by a relative who was deemed safe by the Thai government. And now you have a family system who's taking care of a boy who was abused by his dad. And they now have an 11-year-old kid that they weren't expecting school fees for, weren't expecting to have groceries, weren't expecting, like, all of these. Like, imagine if you had an 11-year-old boy now living with you, how your life changes.
Oh, God.
And so we then work with that family system to make sure that they have what they need, that they're not put in a more desperate situation because of what happened, and that this boy has tutoring, school fees, the medical stuff. Like, we've had survivors that we had a teenage boy who, after law enforcement removed him from his trafficking situation, his online sexual abuse situation, he was diagnosed with HIV. And so now we're helping him accept that diagnosis, understand it, and then what does the future look like? And so that's kind of our multifaceted approach. And then we work with, in a very similar space to Libertas, where we focus on international travelers, where we focus on people coming into a country for the purpose of sexually abusing children. And that can be a lot harder to prosecute, because, I mean, to put it in perspective, if you're here in the U.S., assuming most of your listeners are.
Mm-hmm. I know. We have a big following in Australia.
Okay.
Yeah. We got a big shout out from a guy, which is coming to the pod in a few weeks. His name is Lights Camera Rant.
Okay.
And he's awesome.
That's a pretty sweet name.
Yeah. We'll give him a shout out. But we connected. He came on and talked about Superman, the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
But his reach is Australia. So I think most of our listeners are U.S., Colombia, Australia, and then a good percentage in England.
Okay.
So, but anyway, I mean, but people from essentially like from the developed world that travel quite frequently all over.
Okay. So I'll pick a country that you didn't mention. So let's picture you're living at home in whatever country you find yourself, and you're a teenager. You don't get food every day. You're already pretty desperate. You're falling behind in school. You have all this stuff going on. And then someone comes in from, we'll say China. They come in, they meet you, they give you money as a teenager, they then sexually abuse you, they film it, and then they leave. Okay? How big of a concern is it for you as a teenage child to go and contact law enforcement in China to go prosecute this guy?
Kind of freaking impossible, I would think.
Like, you still don't know where your next meal is coming from. You're already in a bad situation, and the guy left. And so we see this as a massive, massive issue. There's barriers to reporting. It creates safety for abusive people because there's so many barriers to getting caught for this and getting prosecuted for this. And so we work with law enforcement to identify those people, and then work cross-border with agencies in both countries to be able to identify these people, prosecute these people, and then support those survivors. And that's where we focus. And for most of those cases we work, they're filming that abuse. and they're then selling it after their trip, or they're distributing it, or they're just keeping it for themselves. And they're often finding these kids online that they're going to abuse. And so that's where we focus our niche, what we do. As far as why we founded an org as opposed to joining another, is one, we had a vision for what we wanted to create, and we trust each other. We have a very similar idea of accountability, of mission, of ethics in the nonprofit world. Like, we have very similar views in that, right? Like, the very first things we did was figure out, how are we going to hold each other accountable? What governance do we need to make sure that the money's going where it's supposed to, that this is all happening, that the mission has done it, like, in a way that is respectful of the clients and makes real impact and is educated, all of this kind of stuff. That our marketing is not exploitative, that we are doing X, Y, and Z. And that's, so we did that. And then as far as the focus, there's not really other organizations that have, like, other than Libertas, I don't know another organization that works international sex crimes as a focus. Like, you guys serve how many kids that were abused by American tourists?
At least 100.
At least 100. I don't know any other organization that does that. None that market they do. And then the online sexual exploitation stuff that we're working in Thailand, that we're working hand in hand with law enforcement the way we are, I don't know another organization that's doing that. And there's phenomenal organizations out there. Like, Nikoshi does a ton of policy education training work, and that's fantastic, and we support that. It's just not where we're focused right now. We're focused on ending active abuse cases, that the rape is happening today, that it's being distributed today, and then for that kid, how are they healing today? How do we help them heal over time? What does this look like for them, their family system, etc.? And like, what holes are there in the system? Because, right, one of the things we've talked about a lot is different places have a lot of different resources. Like, even state to state in the US, it's vastly different. And if you go to Thailand versus Cambodia versus Colombia, they're going to have different resources available to survivors. Thailand's actually really incredible. They have a ton of free resources with regards to healthcare, to vocational training, to a lot of other things that survivors need. They have an incredible infrastructure that's locally built and run in Thailand by the Thai government, that's very focused on helping kids in these situations. And it's really awesome. And we're able to collaborate with that system. And that's kind of the focus of who we are and what we do. And when you donate, you're donating to help find kids that are actively being exploited, that aren't being searched for. And then you're also donating directly to these child's care. Right now, one of the main things we're fundraising for is to be able to build out our social worker program and to hire, like, our program is locally led. So it's not a ton of people from outside of these countries working in them. Like, our job is to build up a local team. So our Thailand office is run by Thai nationals that love their country, that want to see the kids in it safer, that want to see positive change, that love their home. And our job is to make sure that they have the skills and the education on trafficking, online sexual exploitation, these kind of things, to be able to understand the issue and then implement those things at home. And so my job is to help manage and track and follow all of our caseload as it's continuing to grow. But it's our local staff's job to be the face, to be sitting there with those survivors, to be helping them, to be making sure that they're getting the resources, and then to tell me, hey, Jake, this actually doesn't make sense in Thailand. Like, what you're describing doesn't make sense here. Or that's not how the issue presents here. Or that's X, Y, and Z. Like, I will never know what it's like to grow up Thai better than someone who did it. Like, there's no amount of books I can read. There's no amount of, like, podcasts I can listen to. Like, I will never understand what it was like to grow up in Thailand, in a Thai family, in a Thai system.
Yeah.
Right? And even from, like, Chiang Mai to Chonburi to Phuket, there's differences. And we've talked about this. There is a connection on the abuse issue. Like, your James Bond case. He's been arrested for sexually abusing kids in Latin America, but he went to multiple other countries in Asia to do the same thing. And he's a US guy, and he's been traveling the world abusing kids. And so even though we're working in different corners of the world, we're working the places where a single guy has gone. He's gone to both regions of where we work and abused kids. And tourism and travel has made the world accessible, and you can experience it and you can see it in a way you never could for most of ever. But it also makes it so people who want to abuse kids can go and do that wherever they want. And that, right? Another issue is if someone sexually abuses their neighbor, if they abuse their neighbor kid or their nephew or something like that, like a relationship there, that kid knows their name, they know their address, they know their job, they can report them at any point for the rest of their life. They could turn 40 and decide, you know what, I'm going to go and tell the police that my neighbor sexually abused me for years as a kid. They can do that. If you travel across the world, go to a rural area, find a kid, use a fake name and abuse them, it is so hard for that kid to figure out who you are and who to report it to, and to then have that report taken seriously by law enforcement agencies that are already pretty bogged down with so many reports, right? Like we see, there's so many reports out there. Just look at NCMEC. NCMEC is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and they have a cyber tip line where you can go and report online sexual exploitation, abuse, grooming, CSAM, and they're already sending out millions of tips to different countries every year. Now imagine just being a law enforcement team and having to go through that, as well as getting tips from NGOs, as well as getting reports from kids, and then you're called from somebody who's in a different country who says, hey, this guy in your country abused me. Like there's so many things going on here beyond like just what there's capacity to investigate and understand and do. And so that's where IPA focuses. It's what we do. And if that's something you believe in and want to support, we're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, and like our monthly donor program is growing. And that's been an incredible thing. It allows us to project impact, to understand what we're going to do in the future, to be able to make promises, to be able to project what we can and cannot build out. And we also offer free speaking if you want an expert to either call in, video conference in, or visit where you're at and talk about these issues. We talk to parents, community groups, corporations, nonprofits. We offer consultation, and we do that mostly pro bono because it's something we believe in, and it's a problem we want people to be aware of.
So, in what you were talking about, I had two questions that occurred. Just like with the work that you and Ipa are doing. One, like, and I know this is going to be a question that we get on the podcast, is who are these people? Like, who are these people that are traveling? Who are these people that are abusing? Like, how do I identify them? Like, what kind of, like, they have something in common? Like, who are these people that are committing this crime? And then two, you said something really interesting is when you were talking about the survivors you're working with, you used him, like they're male survivors, which I think. And on our podcast, a lot of the people listening to our podcast are movie people, media people, story people that have seen the stories like Taken, where it's like a little girl or a teenage girl that's taken. And like I won't talk much about Taken because that story's been beaten to death. But when you're talking about trafficking in media, it's usually a little girl who's the one that's taking. But in the stories you shared, you used him, boys. And so I just, can you like speak into that more of like why
I'm saying him,
why you're saying him, and who these people are that commit these type of crimes?
Yeah. So who these people are is complicated because, I mean, there's not a like abuser look. Like people used to look and say, oh, this guy looks like a pedophile, or that guy looks like he's creepy. But the fact is, most people don't show this side of themselves unless they're around safe people to do so, or if they're in the act of abuse. So most people who see, most people who can identify people as child rapists are the people that are children that are getting abused by these men. They're like, oh, this man abuses me. But I mean, we've talked about this. It's been people from poverty. It's been pharmacists. It's been, what's James Bond's career? MMA fighter, right? Like, there's doctors, there's lawyers. There was a therapist in Utah that we've had 2 therapists in Utah who have been held accountable for this year.
Which I know that really gets under your skin.
It does, because it hurts our ability to make impacting the community because it hurts trust, right? Now people are, when they read stories like that, they're like, well, now if I go to a therapist or I send my teenager to a therapist or my child to a therapist, like now I got to worry about the therapist sexually abusing them, right? And it's not just therapists, it's gymnastics coaches, it's doctors, it's nurses. Like
I'm just looking on like the Libertas Facebook because we every like third day or something we post like a local case, and so I'm like, so like a journalist, a Deseret News journalist, a wrestling coach from Idaho, an English teacher from Medellin, Colombia, a Israeli diplomat from Nevada. Like they really could. Like they could be anybody.
Yeah, like try and put those people in a group together. There's no social situation that all those people are in the same room and you're like, oh, you guys fit. You all are. It makes sense that you're all hanging out together. Yeah. Other than the fact that they're abusing kids.
Yeah.
And
a lot of them are men.
Yeah, and it's hard because people abuse who they have access to, right? It's one of the reasons cousins, family, teachers, doctors, like people are abusing who they have access to. And who they think there's the secret, right? They won't get caught. People typically aren't abusing people thinking, I'm going to get caught for this. It's not the norm. It's not, oh yeah, I was expecting to get arrested today for abusing this person. And so when you look at it and you look at these types of cases, part of the thing that separates people that do this for travel is money. And you look at people who can afford to fly across the world to abuse a kid so they don't get caught where they live. Like Stephen Correa, the Miami case that we'll talk about a little bit later, he flew from Miami to Miami to Colombia 40 times in a year and a half. Like
2-hour flight.
I don't have that kind of a dispensable income, but a pharmacist who's passionate about this and wants to do this and is like, I live to abuse kids, like he had the time and the money and the freedom and the passport to do so. And that's one of the major differences we see in the sex tourism industry where people are going to do this is they're people with money that can do this. Or people that travel for work or people that travel for all these other types of reasons. And that's just really sad. The other thing I will say about your other question of why I say he, most of the cases, and we didn't intend it this way, most of the cases we've worked so far have been boys. Over 80% of the kids we've identified in these sexual abuse cases and that we're serving are male. They're teenage boys. And part of that's, where it is, part of that's just the cases we've encountered, what we've been referred to, right? Because like that first case we did was a dad and his son, but then with the digital forensics team, they got connected to and identified men who were also into abusing boys. And so that's where that case developed, right? So it's been kind of a chain of what we've followed. It's also what we see, but this is also happening to men. Like if you look at sextortion, which is where people make an account and they get a young boy to send them nude images or use the AI to create nude images and then they blackmail them for money. That happens on social media all the time. There was a case here in Utah that happened a couple years ago, and the boy, from the time the scammer first messaged him to the time the boy killed himself was 5 hours. Like that was here in Utah. And that scammer lived overseas. Those often target English-speaking boys because that's the language the scammers understand, and blackmailing boys with nude images and all of those kind of things, it's the target. It's where they go. It's what they do. And they get teenage boys to send them a nude image and then they blackmail them. And the scammers tell them to kill themselves if they can't pay. You can read, there's news stories about this online where they'll say, if you can't pay me, you should kill yourself because I'm going to ruin your life. And then these boys do. There's so many suicides in sextortion, and it's terrible. And it happens on social media. Like if your kid's on Facebook, they're at risk for this. That's where this happens. And so the cases we work so far have been boys. And Thailand is very accepting in the sense of we can give resources to boys in Thailand. Awesome. They'll accept aftercare services. There's countries I've worked in where there were males and they were like, we were trafficked and sexually abused, but we don't want any services. We're worried someone can find out about us, and I would rather kill myself than have everyone find out. Because it's culturally, would ruin so much if their sexual abuse came out. And that's something that we deal with as providers, and where we have to be culturally understanding and sensitive. Because if me saying, hey, I'm going to provide case management service to you, puts them at risk of suicide, is that really a risk that they want to take, that I want to take, that should be taken? And at the end of the day, it's their prerogative, right? We have clients that say, hey, we want to move on from this. Our family's got it. We're okay. And we're 2 thumbs up. Call us if you need us. But if it's like in Thailand, we can do the care services. Even here in Utah, a lot of my therapy clients are male. Like I see males who were sexually abused. And there's an organization called Men Healing that is to support male survivors of sexual abuse. They're a nonprofit. I think they're based in Utah, and they do community peer groups, things like that, and they work with men who've been sexually abused. These are all resources that exist, and we do serve females. We had a case in a karaoke bar in Thailand where 2 girls were being sold online on Facebook, and then you could get connected with the bar, go to the bar, and sexually abuse these girls. And one girl was trafficked for around a month, and she had dozens of men rape her. And that was primarily done through Facebook connections, which is where we identified the case, took it to law enforcement, identified the bar, identified the girls, and law enforcement was able to action that. And that's a lot of what we do. And we do serve women. We do serve girls. It's just been the way it's started. The majority of our cases right now involve teenage boys. We had a case recently where a man was arrested for sexually abusing boys in his neighborhood. And during his arrest, he said, I've probably sexually abused 20 boys. He said 10 boys. And then he walked into the other room, and our digital forensics guys were working with law enforcement and going through his phones, computers, all of this kind of stuff. And when he saw that, he almost immediately confessed to over 20, because he knew that the information was going to come out anyways. And that's just like 20 boys in your neighborhood community by one man who went and found and gained access to and sexually abused 20 boys and filmed it and put those videos and photos on his computer, who messaged with the boys about it. Like that's where this issue is. And you don't need to travel the world to impact this issue. Like there's so much in regards to online safety that's local, that's here, that's in your state or country. Look up how they respond. Look up what laws there are. Look up what law enforcement's doing. Look up your Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force that's going out and finding kids who are being exploited in your community. Like these are areas to focus and understand. It just happens to be that I do a lot of therapy here, and that IPA we're focusing on Asia. That's where our relationships were the best. It's where we knew the need the best. And 2 of our founders are based out there. And it's where we've been poised to make impact. And it's the type of services we can offer were requested there. So that's why we picked what we did, where we did. And if you want to understand more about our investigations side and our law enforcement support side, you should talk to Damien or Chad. Chad was an Internet Crimes Against Children's investigator. He worked on one of those task forces for decades and did incredible work. And now he trains law enforcement in other countries to do the same. And he has managed and built out our Thailand's investigations department and what we do and our policies, procedures, our actual impact with those law enforcement cases. Like, it was Chad. Chad's incredible at what he does. And I'm like, you said I founded IPA. I would say I co-founded with a couple other people, and Chad is incredible at what he does. And you should have him on someday.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna write that down. I'm gonna do that. That'd be a good idea. Chad Pod. I love that story. So many of that stories, that everything you described is so like horrific and sad and just terrible. But I love that you gave like a voice to men and boys specifically, because I just over my course of like doing this as well, like I haven't met near as many boys as you have that have been sexually abused or trafficked. But the one thing that's common for them is just how hard it was to come forward and have like your experience acknowledged and have it taken seriously, and just the emotions that go into just struggling of like, well, why did he pick me? What's going on? So I love that you gave a voice to that. And there's something you said, sitting in the Megaplex, watching the Lord of the Rings marathon yesterday, and because I tell people this about Libertas too. It's like when I started Libertas, I didn't intend to be supporting girls that were sexually assaulted by foreigners in the city of Medellin. It wasn't my intent. But you just kind of put one foot in front of the other, and your story just kind of leads you to wherever, and someone knows someone, you're just like, oh, how did I end up in this situation? And I was watching, like, Lord of the Rings, right? I was watching all of the extended versions kind of back to back to back, which was a long day, but it was awesome because it became one full story. And at the end of the battle, where Boromir dies, Aragorn puts his knife away, and he's like, well, we're not gonna let Pippin and Merry die. Let's follow them. Let's see what kind of impact we can still make. Follow them to Rohan. Like 3 hours later, like he's walking into the tunnel of the dead, getting ready to fight a dead guy. And I was like, I bet that he didn't know of like, how did I stumble into this situation? This wasn't supposed to happen. We were just supposed to rescue 2 hobbits. I wasn't supposed to lead an army at Helm's Deep. I wasn't supposed to get ready to literally sword fight with a dead guy. You just kind of stumble into some situations, but because you're trying to do good, you're putting one foot in front of the other. So when you talk about it wasn't our intent to kind of have the mission that you have now and to be doing what you're doing now, I just love that that's part of your story, because it's for people that I know that go about doing good and looking to make a positive impact in the world and doing good where you stand. And so the fact that it led you all at this moment to where you're supporting these boys, you're supporting these girls, you're supporting these law enforcement, you're tracking sex tourists and working these investigations, like it's such a cool and beautiful part of the story of the International Protection Alliance. Mm-hmm. So thanks for sharing. But there's a story I want to talk about involving a sex tourist, and I bring up this story because for like those of you that are watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast, I've known Jake for it's 8 years now.
Yeah, and I think we made it about 30 minutes in before either of us cussed. So that's that's a pretty good record for us.
Yeah, your family probably listen to this, huh? So,
and they've heard me say shit.
Oh, okay. I'll make it so shit's the most intense what I say. But I've known you for a long time, and I don't know if I've ever heard you quite as, and you can correct me if I'm getting my terminology wrong, but I don't know if I've ever heard you quite as happy, inspired, pumped, angry. Like, I don't know, like the word I'm describing, but like those 3 days that you were in Miami, I've seen you in your good times, I've seen you in your bad times, and I think that those 3 days were some of like the most peak Jake I've ever experienced. So take me through those 2 days. Correct me if I'm wrong. I could be totally just speaking out of my ass here. But I want to know more about just the experience in Miami and what it was like, and
So for some background, Tyler's been working on a case supporting multiple survivors of a man named Stephen Correa, who we mentioned earlier, who traveled from Miami to Colombia for the purpose of sexually abusing kids. He sexually abused over 50 kids in those trips, and he filmed so much of it, which is why, partially why they got the conviction of life, is because law enforcement had those photos and videos. And he was traveling to Latin America. He was giving girls iPhones and saying, if you don't cry during this rape, you can keep it. And he was seeking girls who'd never had sex before, who were young, and that was what he wanted. And so fast forward, Tyler's been supporting these girls for a long time, and this case is coming up in Miami. And so IPA and Libertas collaborated, and shout out to Brooklyn Swenson for hosting the fundraiser that got the funds to help get these girls to Miami to testify, get our team there, and get these girls home with gifts, with supplies for their baby, with everything they needed. Like, shout out to you. If you don't know who that is, she sells art online. She's incredible. Go look her up. Brooklyn Swenson Art. She'll come up.
She on Instagram?
Yeah.
When we do this, when we turn this into a reel, we'll tag her.
Do it.
Do a collab with her. That'd be
cool. Do it.
Okay.
But she fundraised for it. So what IPA did was We funded them to get there, hotel, car, food, transportation, passports, all of that stuff that we sent them home with. And then we met him in Miami. So I flew to Miami and provided crisis counseling, transportation, and some positive experiences after court. So these girls came up to go to Stephen Correa's sentencing and to give impact statements. And it was incredible. These girls were incredible. They're 17 and 18 at the time. And that's correct, right? 17 and 18 at the time.
Little baby.
And he had abused them within the last year or two. And like we got there, and the assistant U.S. attorney was meeting with him that morning and told him, hey, we've prepared a separate room for you so you don't have to sit in the same courtroom with him, and you can just come in and give testimony. And both of those girls were like, we want to be in the courtroom. Like, we want to sit on the front row. And I was like, all right, like, they're ready. And they went in, and he pled guilty to specific charges, and these girls gave statements describing, like, one of the girls Skyped in from Colombia and gave a statement. One of the girls who came gave a statement, and they talked about the abuse that they suffered, what he did, all of this kind of stuff, and asked the judge to help them. And I remember the prosecutor said at one point, you know, Stephen didn't hear these girls' cries and their screams for help, but we will. As a country, we have to. And that shook me. Then when we were there, court lasted probably an hour and a half, I think. I wasn't watching my watch. I didn't have anything else going on that day. I was there for that. And it was really cool. Like, they sectioned us, so one half was sitting on one side, and then people supporting Correa were on the other side. And his side was pretty empty. We didn't really interact with them. And then our side had the girls, the social worker from Libertas who came up, Adriana. She was awesome, by the way. Wonderful to meet her. The law enforcement from Colombia that came up, Homeland Security, their child forensic interviewer who came in from another state who had already gone to Colombia to interview these girls. It was so cool to see this team, and it was just awesome. And everyone treated these girls with respect. Everyone was so kind to them, thanked them for coming, sat as like a wall around them. And when Stephen testified, Stefan testified. He talked about traumatic experience he had as a kid. He talked about getting a divorce and talked about finding God since he'd been arrested, and hoped the judge would take that all into consideration and give him a lighter sentence, was what he shared. So that was wild. But I even remember after we were talking about it, and one of the girls was like, hey, he said he went through like a hard time and like been divorced, like, and we were talking about it, and I said, you know, at the end of the day, a lot of people go through divorce. Most people who go through divorce don't fly to another country and abuse 50 kids. And they were like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. And like, but talking about it as like you're talking to children, and they're strong and powerful and resilient. And one of them was an adult now. It was like, this man hurt them. He held power over them. And these girls have healed so much, and are continuing to. And you know, after this, when they went home, like, we still talk, but they're in the care of Libertas International, and Libertas is doing amazing stuff for them. And so we went, and it was a wide range of emotions. You know, my job was not to sit there and process that day. It was to help these girls. And so my job was to be there for them, to make sure they were okay, to make sure that they had what they need, that they were resting enough, that they were well fed, all of those things. And so I'd been processing for weeks after, of just, you know, watching this man be held accountable. Something that most of my clients, that never happens for. Most of my therapy clients here in Utah, the person who abused them was never held accountable. That's just factually correct. And that's true if you look up statistics about sexual abuse, domestic violence, and stuff. Like, most people that are reported for abuse don't get a conviction. And to hear how rewarding that was for them, you know, to hear their statements after the fact of what it was like for them to have a country honor their abuse and be like, you know what, we're going to hold them accountable for you. Like, that's what we believe in, and that's what we stand for. And that was awesome. And like the government, the agents, all the people that worked on that case, incredible to be able to put that together and successfully do it. And then after we had court, we went to the ocean, and they'd never swam. They'd never been in the ocean. I didn't know it. Neither of them could swim. And so we're at the beach, and I'm sitting with Adriana, and they're out swimming. And she asked me, she's like, how good are they at swimming? And I'm like, I don't know. She goes, I don't think they can swim. And then we texted you, and you were like, no, I don't think they can swim. And they were just out in the ocean and diving around. I'd never been to the beach. I didn't know the currents. I didn't know any of this stuff. And I'm just watching it. I'm like, I might have to run out there. And just, like, it's not a super lifeguard heavy beach. And it was just like, but they had the time in their life. And just as important as this guy being held accountable, like, these girls were then given a healing experience. They had fun. They were able to relax. They were able to celebrate, and they were able to be given things like the girl that brought her baby. We sent her home with all of these supplies for new moms, formula, like a sling to hold her baby, clothes, medical stuff, and we printed out the TSA guidelines for mother bags because moms can carry more stuff through TSA. That's like protected so they can bring it for a baby, and we put that on there so that she could just show that to TSA. Like, we made sure she got home, and they've been home. And I mean, how are they now?
Oh, well, they're good. The one with the baby has seen better days. It's just like, you bring up a fascinating conversation, because it's like, what does it take to heal somebody? What does it take to fight abuse, empower somebody, fight exploitation? And a lot of it is like cultural stuff that we just can't control.
Yeah.
So like, one thing in Colombia that's been going on forever is it has the longest ongoing civil war between right-wing people and left-wing extremists. And so one of the girls, she got caught up in it. Not because she's a participant, but she happens to live in a place where these two people are fighting. So she's currently applying for this like scholarship, this support that helps people who've been displaced by the war. So like, you can give, and this is like what makes like the work that we do like so complicated, is that you can rescue somebody, right? Remove them from their abuser. You can hold the abuser accountable, but there's still so many cultural aspects of like healing and survival that it's an ongoing process. It's like a book that will never be done. You never finish writing. There's no end chapter. There's no other cover, because like, her process continues of just making sure that her and her baby are kept safe. The other girl, she's actually going to the UN with Steve Murphy, who's also a guest on our podcast.
Awesome.
Because that trip,
she's gonna rock it.
Oh, I know, I can't wait. She's gonna be so good. Because that trip for her, it just, because she's a believer. And she said that she had this moment with her mom where she was flying in the clouds and she felt so close to God, and they both talked amongst themselves. Like, I didn't think that something like this was possible. So we got an airplane to go to Miami. And for her, seeing how, because I listened into the hearing, right? Like, I wasn't there, but I listened in, and I could hear like just the attention and respect of both countries on her in that moment where she was speaking, right? And for her, that unlocked something inside her soul, inside her story, where it's like, the same way that I was given this opportunity, I want to give that opportunity to others. So she comes back home, she has all these questions of like, well, what is it like to study psychology? What is it like to study social work? Like, what is it like to work in a nonprofit? What is it like to work in government? Like, what does it look like to stand in a place where you are leading someone to that moment that she participated in? And so it just unlocked, I think, dreams for this girl that she didn't think were possible, which is cool. Like, it's cool to just see, she's got a long way ahead, obviously, because she's 18 years old. She's got lots of school left. She has all these experiences, but it's given her the mindset of like, I can do this because I've already done something amazing. I can continue to do things that are amazing. Yeah. So for her, like, it unlocked kind of like the permission to dream and something that she wants to explore in life, of being involved in those type of things. So
that's so cool.
So yeah, we're very proud, we're very impressed, and they're two great kids, and specifically the one that talked, I want to kind of ask you about that moment of, I mentioned that she talked in court and that she gave a really impactful statement. She spoke for 50 other girls that couldn't speak there today, and this guy tried to talk to her after. like I want to like with you is like there that someone that's like protecting her, that's helping her. What was it like when this pedophile tried to engage verbally with one of his victims in court?
Honestly, not surprising, but it was intense. Like it was like he stopped looking at the judge. He was standing up and he was looking at her. There was still a barrier between them. He was at the mic. He just started talking to her and making all these claims and promises of like, oh, I actually never filmed your abuse. I never did this. Like, I want you to know this for your life. And it was like, okay,
shut the fuck up.
There's no world that you have credibility. Yeah. Like even let's say that was true. That doesn't help her wonder. It doesn't give her peace. She doesn't go, oh, thank you. You're a trusted person. I can take you at your word. Like there's no world where that statement means anything to her. And it felt more to me like he was trying to come off sincere for the judge than it did trying to like help her. Because if he was capable of understanding her, he would know that like if someone had just defrauded you of $1 million, but then they told you, I'm really honest with my money, like you can't believe that.
Yeah. And
so it's just, it didn't feel like it was for her. And the judge squashed it really fast and was just like, hey, you can't address her, address me.
That was awesome.
She was great. And shout out to the justice system for all they did for these girls, from providing a room for them, to providing a room after, to making sure they were taken care of, to answering their questions, like to giving them all the autonomy they could, for getting them in the country to give statements, like all of those things, incredible. As far as
even like getting in the country is really hard. Yeah. Like that was a miracle, especially like how things are now. Like the effort that went into making sure those girls could be there for an hour and a half in that court hearing was
like those agents stepped up.
Oh yeah, it was like a whole week worth of work nonstop. So
and I also want to backtrack to, you mentioned earlier, you know, when like we talk about healing and helping people heal, but like one of the things I talk about, for example, with therapy clients is sometimes we talk about healing like it's a destination, but it's really not. It's not like if I get to this mark, I'm healed. Like, is it when you're able to hold a job and not be in debt? Are you healed? Is it when you can sleep through the night and not have nightmares? Is it when your social relationships are good, right? Because one of the things I do with clients is we'll draw a graph of like a timeline of things like, how are you in social settings, work, PTSD symptoms, fulfillment, self-talk, how you view yourself, your emotional health, your physical health, and then we'll draw these graphs. And a lot of times they're not all great and all bad at the same time. A lot of time they're fluctuating in different ways. And just like anybody, just because you went through sexual abuse doesn't mean that all of a sudden you can just be healed, right? Like, I mean, you look at any group of people and there's mental health struggles, there's physical struggles, there's relational struggles, there's self-image struggles. And to put it to a, hey, you have to be healed, or we heal you, is like pretty disingenuous. Like, our job is to help them. And what makes sense in one area doesn't make sense in another, right? Like therapy models that are super heavily researched on middle and upper class college kids that have most of their needs met, and then taking that to the Congo and saying, you were raped 100 times, the same therapy model is going to work for you growing up with almost nothing in rural Congo in a high conflict war zone, right? Like, it's not the same. What makes sense culturally, where one culture may, self-disclosure and narrative therapy and talking about what happened to you may be really important. Another culture that doesn't value those things, that may not be healing. That may just be foreign and weird. And that's something we also have to be mindful of, and that's why a locally led model works. There's a cultural understanding beyond just what's available online and what you can research and what you can try and understand. Like, there's a locally led, this is what makes sense culturally here. Like, and that's part of helping people heal. Like, people might give me shit for this, but I don't think everyone needs to go to therapy. Like, therapy can be a great tool and a great asset and a great resource. There's people that thrive without it, that find healing in other ways. And my job as a therapist is not to keep people in therapy forever. It's to figure out what therapy can and can't offer, get them to the best place they can be, and help them get to a point that they don't need, like, the goal is not weekly therapy for the rest of your life. And if your therapist is putting you there, like, it's a pretty big disservice to you.
He's charging your insurance.
Like, and so when I look at this, like, one of the first things we talk about when we talk about therapy is termination of services. You know, what's your goal? What's your point if you get to this that you're like, you know what, I don't need therapy as much anymore? And I have clients that I check in with them like every few months, and they just want to check in. And then if something really bad happens again, or they get into a spell, or they do something, then we do more frequent therapy again. I have clients that have gotten to a point they're like, okay, I've gotten what I can get. And I have clients that I've told them, you know, the skills that I have, this is the areas that we've helped with. There's stuff you're wanting to work on that are not my main area of understanding, like OCD. I don't know a ton about OCD. I know a little bit, but if a client comes in with heavy trauma and OCD, we work on the trauma stuff and a basic understanding of OCD. But then when they're ready to just super focus on OCD and how that presents in their life, I refer them to someone who specializes in that. Like, that's not my area. And so those are just some thoughts I had where you also mentioned healing.
Okay. So last question about Miami. You said you went to the stuff that you did for them after, the stuff you did for them while you were there, the preparation, but you also got to speak at the sentencing.
Mm-hmm.
2 questions. What was that like? And what was it like? What did you say? And what do you hope the judge took away from what you had to say?
And I'll preface it with this. I public speak, I train, I teach. I've been doing that for a long time. I used to do that at the zoo as a kid. Like, I would take a bird of prey, go out in front of 40 people and teach about, you know, the great horned owl I was holding. That's and cool. Like, so I'm comfortable public speaking. I was terrified. My left leg was starting to shake, so I did kind of a trick I learned where I just locked my leg out so my knee couldn't bend.
Oh,
and so it just made it so my knee was pivoting a little side to side as opposed to like my whole leg shaking. And then you keep your other leg bent so that you don't like not get blood to your brain and finger or anything like that. Yeah. But I felt at the beginning, before I spoke, I was sitting there and I was like, I really want this to go well. I'm nervous to speak. And once court started and I was sitting with those girls and looking at the whole team, I was like, this isn't about me at all. This isn't about me speaking. This is about them. And I knew that, but my anxiety focused on the fact that like I was speaking to a judge in a courtroom of people and it focused on like, oh, this is your first time, you're done. Don't even get up. Like, just leave the courtroom. You're a therapist, get out of here. And I was able to, once he walked in and he looked over at the girls and they looked back at him and the whole team was there just surrounding him, I was like, I speaking for, like, advocating for them, getting up and advocating for the girls that weren't in the room, advocating for if this man was let free, the girls that he would likely continue to abuse. But it became like that overwhelmingly gave me peace versus the anxiety that was coming up. Once I got up, I just looked at the judge and, you know, I spoke as well as like my own words. I spoke yours and the words of your organization who's like just been there with these girls for years. And it was a wild opportunity. I'm glad I did it. And at the end of the day, like, I was adding my voice to a slew of others who were advocating for the same thing. And I was a very small part, and I had a good time. I was honored to play my part. And at the end of the day, it was just an incredible experience to be able to advocate and to see the justice system respect the kids that were abused as opposed to the person who abused them. And that was incredible for me on a healing level as well. Because I mean, we deal with this. We deal with working with survivors who won't see that kind of justice and how rare it is. And that's been something that's been incredibly healing. And I will also say this, one of the things that IPA does well, and it's also because of the nature of the crime, is we're able to work with law enforcement to get good convictions, to get sentencing. And a big part of that is that the evidence is digital. None of our cases are a he said, she said, where it's that this person did this to me, but I'm saying something else. Like, the evidence is online and it's on their phones and it's on their computers. And so we're able to not only identify these people, but build really good legal cases, because once again, you have to understand the local model, right? Like, understand Thailand's laws, what they can prosecute, what they need as evidence, what they can use in court, all of those kind of things. And to be able to do that, we need to understand locally, because Thailand to Colombia to Nepal to Ecuador to Cambodia to Colombia to the US, those are different. And so we do see a really high rate of conviction for the crimes they're arrested for. And that's kind of how I'll finish that. And the Miami case was just incredible to be a part of it and play the role that I did.
Well, I know from our end we sure are happy you went and represented it, and I can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, thank you for giving us the opportunity to collaborate on it.
My pleasure, bro.
Yeah.
Okay, so to end this podcast, I have 5 questions for you. Question 1 is advice for any young social workers that are listening to this on how to end up where you are now. What tangible advice would you give them to do the kind of work that you're currently doing?
I would say if this is where you want to be, to specialize. Focus your education on this. Focus on what's called complex trauma versus acute trauma. Acute trauma is like single instance, like I was sexually abused once. For most of our clients, the sexual abuse was systemic over a long period of time, compounded with multiple traumas. How we heal from those things has commonalities, but there's also differences. I would say to figure out where you want to make a difference, right? Like, even if I want to serve populations that are experiencing homelessness versus in the US, versus cross-border crimes versus digital crimes versus adults versus children, like, I have to learn that. I don't see kids as a therapist. I don't see anyone younger than 13. I've never explored it. I've never learned it. I don't know how to do it. So I refer those children out. I see parents, but I figured out where I wanted to focus, and that's where I focused my education, my mentoring, my internships I did, all of those things is what I'd say. And then ask people. A lot of people will give advice and opportunities and experience to kids who are to college kids who are learning and wanting to understand, like volunteer, get an internship, ask for advice. I always ask people what book they would recommend I read, and that led me to reading a lot of good books on this specifically.
Question 2: if a male comes forward to me, tells me that they've been sexually abused, how to react in a way that's honoring them and their experience?
I would say for the most part, I'd say it's kind of the same, where like I would still belief, validation, thank you for sharing. I'm glad you shared that with me. I'm glad you trusted me with that. You could ask, what you something I like to do is I like to give them the opportunity to say yes or no, and I'll ask, can I ask you questions, or did you just want to tell me that? And if they are okay with me asking more questions, I'll usually ask, like, am I the first person you've told? How, what made you decide you wanted to tell me? Is this still something you think about a lot? Something that specifically a lot of male survivors that I work with deal with is if they were sexually abused in adulthood, they have been sexually abused by people smaller than them. And they're criticized for not becoming violent to their abuser. But if you're like fight or flight and freeze and fawn are still things, right? There's also things to consider, like becoming violent has consequences. And depending on the nature of relations to the abuser, like that doesn't always make sense. And so I wouldn't, like, you're not just going to get brittle, small-looking men that tell you they were sexually abused as an adult. You'll get men that look like you. They're like, hey, I'm physically fit, I'm tall, I'm in shape, I'm, like, great at, like, social situations that have been sexually abused. And I wouldn't make jokes about it. I wouldn't say things like there's two sides to every story. Like, if you're not a jury, you're not a legal setting, you're not an investigator for the New York Times or for a law enforcement agency that's investigating this case, you're a friend. And I'd focus on what you can provide as a friend.
Where can people find you? Someone listens to this podcast and they're like, I'm just so inspired by the mission of the International Protection Alliance. Where can they go to support, find more? Where to go? Where do we go to find out what you're doing?
Yeah, put it in the show notes, but you can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of those like popular social media sites. And then our website is protectall.org. It's super easy to remember. No spaces, no underline anything, like protectall.org.
Super easy to spell too.
Yep.
Our website has people misspelling it all the time. Okay. Movies made about Jacob Ostler. Who plays you as the main character?
You.
Me.
Yeah, I'll cast you. Why not? Give you your first acting gig. You can be me.
I would play a good you.
Or I'd just cast Tom Hardy because I want to meet him.
Oh, that would be
like nothing about Tom Hardy says Jacob Ostler, but I would love to meet Tom Hardy. And so if I cast him, I'm assuming I get to meet him, and I would love to catch up with Tommy.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Tom Hardy, your boy. I still think Daniel Bruhl, man. The guy who played Baron Zemo. I mean, look at the
results. You do movies like this is your area, and I agree with you. Like he's also awesome.
God, the similarities are so.
Yeah. But if I'm picking, I just want to meet Tom Hardy, and I want to work out traps with him one day, and just
traps are crazy, bro.
And I just want to chat with him, and maybe we'll get a matching tattoo. Who knows?
Okay.
I don't know.
Oh, you thought that's a lot. Okay, got it. Okay, very cool. Okay, last question. Give us a movie to inspire us, or a TV show that is inspiring to you. Send us on a note just of something to consume that's just something that you enjoy. Maybe it's your favorite one, or one you go back to quite often.
Lord of the Rings: Return of the King Extended Edition.
Okay, why?
Just watch it. It's perfect. There's nothing like it.
It is perfect.
There never will be anything else. And
that is perfect cinema, bro.
Like,
that is, and like we'll talk about that because Jake. Spoiler alert. Actually, the next podcast we're doing will actually come out before this one. But for those of you watching in reverse, Jake is coming back in like 2 hours to do a Lord of the Rings podcast. At least Fellowship of the Ring. So Return of the King one won't be out for a bit. But the soundtrack, bro, like Howard Shore, I really do believe is the perfect movie soundtrack because the soundtrack at all times portrays exactly what the audience is feeling in that moment.
Yeah.
Like
I listen to For Frodo while I run so often.
Oh, that is peak, bro.
I would say that's what I'd recommend you do today. Is go look up For Frodo. It's from The Return of the King. Just listen to it. Maybe go on a run. It's incredible.
That scene almost ended up really different. Have we talked about this?
No.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about Lord of the Rings in the Lord of the Rings Return of the King podcast when he comes back. But I'll talk about it now. Is that they actually debated like having like Aragorn go into a vision and fight in a sword fight with Sauron in that fight. Like they had it all filmed everything. Because like when he's fighting the troll, he's actually filming a fight against Sauron. And they watched it again and again and again. And Peter Jackson was like, this moment is not about Aragorn. Like he's had his moments all throughout the history of the Lord of the Rings. This moment is about Frodo and Sam. And Aragorn's heroism in that moment is not in a sword fight with the Dark Lord. It is potentially sacrificing himself to give Frodo at best another 2 hours to climb that mountain. Now it's like, that is the decision. That is the decision. Like, yeah, sword fight with Sauron would be cool, but it's not in the way they have it is just perfect.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in. We'll add the links to IPA in the show notes, and we look forward to having Jake back to give us some updates. Chad, if he'll come on, and come see you back on Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And thanks for being on Locked Off Logic podcast.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for listening.